Last December, our street in Maple Glen felt like a snow globe someone had shaken too hard. Twinkling reindeer, menorahs in bay windows, and a sparkling tree at the cul-de-sac brought neighbors outside with cocoa and stories. Then an email from the HOA hit inboxes. A proposed ban on holiday lights. Safety, energy, and uniformity, it said. Grumbles grew into fear, and fear into frustration. As a retired family doctor and neighbor, I heard anxious voices on every porch. Could we keep traditions without keeping anyone up at night? We did. This is how compromise saved our season. If community stories help you breathe easier through neighborhood conflict, please like this video, subscribe for more calm and practical guides, and share it with your HOA or block. Comment with your holiday tradition and one compromise you would try. Together, we can light homes, not tempers. This season together. I'm Dr. Michael Carter. I spent 30 years in family medicine a few miles outside Columbus, Ohio, listening to the worries that keep people awake and helping them find steady ground. When I retired, I promised my patients I would keep looking after people, just in a different way. That promise brought me to the center of a neighborhood story that almost tore Maple Glen in two. The headline version goes like this. They tried to ban holiday lights, and we found a fair compromise. But headlines miss the heartbeat. So I want to slow down and walk you through the pulse. Because behind every porch bulb is a person. And when you listen to the person, the policy gets easier. This began in late October, when pumpkins were still firm, and the high school band was practicing a new medley that echoed across the soccer field. Our HOA is ordinary, the kind most Americans live in without thinking about it much. We pay dues, we mow with the lines going the same direction, we wave at each other on trash day, and on Saturday mornings we bring extra donuts to the pool house because someone always forgets breakfast. We are teachers, nurses, veterans, grandparents, new parents, line cooks, and a few of us who cannot stop fixing things with zip ties. We have people who mark Christmas, Hanukkah, Diwali, Kwanzaa, and people who celebrate winter with a candle and a good book. It's a place where a snowblower crosses 3 driveways without asking, and where a spare shovel leans against every porch after the first storm. Then came the email. The subject line was simple, but the body felt heavy. The draft said that, for safety and uniformity, external holiday lights of any kind would be banned for the season. No strings on eaves, no lit yard figures, no window candles visible from the street. The board cited a few concerns. A near miss with an overloaded circuit last year, a complaint about flashing lights keeping a baby up, and rising energy costs. They wanted to avoid arguments and avoid risk. The intent was not mean, it was cautious. But to many, it felt like a hand on the mouth during a song. I stepped onto my porch that afternoon and heard 2 conversations at once. From the right, I heard Jasmine Lee saying, "My son has been counting down to seeing the lights since July." From the left, I heard Evelyn Brooks, who taught 2nd grade for 40 years, say, "Bright blinking hurts my eyes now and I go to sleep by 9. I just need quiet nights." They were both telling the truth. That's the thing about community conflict. Both sides often hold a piece of the same truth. If we treat the situation like a diagnosis, we can do what good medicine does. Start with history. Listen without interrupting. Name what's working. Name what is not. Then test a remedy that does less harm than the problem. Maple Glen's holidays were never about winning a contest. We do not have a trophy for brightest house. We do, however, have traditions that function like a quilt, each square stitched by a particular family. The Rosenbergs set up a beautiful menorah in their bay window and invite kids to spin dreidels on the first night. Ajay and Priya Patel set luminous little diyas along their entry for Diwali, and they share saffron rice with anyone who knocks. The O'Connor family, Irish to the bone, hang green and gold garlands and a big star on the gable. Pastor Ruth strings warm white on the handrails of the church down the street, and one year she added blue lights in solidarity with those who felt left out. Do you see how the glow is not just electric? It is relational. When you ban a glow, you risk dimming what binds. That first evening, I called Linda Pine, our HOA president. Linda is practical, kind, and a little too good at spreadsheets. She does not love conflict. None of us do. But she is brave enough to hold it. I told her what I was hearing on porches. She told me what she was reading in her inbox. She described a thread from a veteran, Frank Delgado, who said flashing lights sent his heart racing because they reminded him of a rough night overseas. She told me a different thread from a dad who said, "Holiday lights are the first thing my daughter asks about when the weather turns." Linda felt pulled in both directions. As a doctor, I used to say, when symptoms seem opposite, check the common cause. Here, the common cause was stress. We were moving too fast toward a ban because we were afraid of the mess. The medicine was to slow down. I asked Linda for a week before any vote. "Give me 7 days," I said, "to listen, and bring back a draft that honors safety and joy." She agreed. We sent out a simple message. Listening session at the clubhouse Thursday, 7 p.m. Bring your cup, your concern, and one solution. I arranged chairs in a loose circle, not rows. Rows make speeches. Circles make eye contact. On a side table, we put coffee, tea, and ginger cookies. I wrote the ground rules on a poster in handwriting big enough for the back row. 1. Speak from your experience. 2. Name the impact, not just the intent. 3. Offer at least one possible way forward. 4. We are neighbors when we leave. 23 people came, more than enough. I started with breath, the same way I started tough appointments. "Let's take a slow breath together," I said. "I want to hear what matters most to you about holiday lights and what keeps you up about them." Then we went clockwise. Evelyn said her cataracts made harsh brightness painful, and she worried about tripping over extension cords on the sidewalk. Frank said, "I'm proud of my service, and I love my block, but fast strobing gives me a surge like combat." Jasmine said, "I work nights. Lights are a promise to my boy that the world can still be kind." Pastor Ruth said, "We want to celebrate without excluding anyone, and that requires a shared rhythm." Rabbi Rosenberg smiled and said, "Light is ancient language. We can learn to speak it softly together." Ajay said he could shift from open-flame diyas to LED lookalikes if he had guidance about safety, and he volunteered to show others. Leo Martinez, an engineer, brought a little meter and said, "I can help measure brightness at the property line so we talk about facts." Nora, an ophthalmologist, said, "There are specific wavelengths and flicker rates that cause discomfort. We can avoid those." Deshawn, an electrician, offered to inspect outdoor outlets for free. And then there was a teen named Gabby who said something I think about still. "I don't care how fancy the display is. I care that the street feels like a hug." There were tears, not angry ones, relief ones. People were being heard. My notes filled 2 pages: safety, sleep, inclusion, energy, tradition, health. I drew circles around 2 phrases that repeated timing and brightness. Those were our dosage levers, if you will, like dialing a medication until the side effects settle. We closed with a promise. We would draft a plan that turned a ban into a rhythm. The next morning, I brewed a fresh pot of coffee and called 3 people. The first was Chief Matt Hayward, the local fire marshal. He exhaled when he heard we were taking this seriously. "Most problems," he said, "come from overloaded circuits, frayed cords, and folks running indoor lights outdoors." He gave me a list of easy fixes: GFCI outlets outside, no more than 3 strands end to end unless manufacturer says otherwise, keep cords off walkways, and use timers to control duration. The second person was Carla Nguyen from the city planning office. Carla shared the city's guidance on light pollution and recommended a dark sky-friendly approach. Avoid uplighting, shield bulbs, and set an off time to respect circadian rhythms and wildlife. The third call was to a colleague from my clinic days who specialized in sleep medicine. Dr. Singh reminded me that blue heavy light in late evening delays sleep, especially for older adults and children. Warm white light below a certain brightness, for a limited window, is better. Think campfire, she said, not floodlight. I smiled, wrote campfire, underlined it twice, and decided that our plan should sound like a campfire. Warm, predictable, gentle on the eyes and the nerves. I also read our HOA covenants. Buried after the section on mailbox paint, there was a quiet sentence. Seasonal decorative displays are permissible subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions in the interest of safety and community harmony. That sentence was a gift. It said we could shape behavior, not ban celebration. I consulted a friend who teaches at the law school. She reminded me that to stay fair and legal, any rule must be content neutral. We cannot endorse one tradition over another. We cannot restrict by message. We can limit brightness, hours, and safety practices for all. We can also accommodate disabilities under federal law. If someone, like Frank, needs strobe-free zones, to manage health, that is not a preference. It is a need that good neighbors can honor. We could stitch accommodation into the policy so it does not depend on whispering to the right person. Accommodations should be normal. Linda and I met in the clubhouse with Leo, Nora, and Deshawn. We brought sticky notes, tape, and an intention to turn a tug of war into a handshake. I started with a line to set tone. Our goal is a quiet street that still sings. Then we wrote the bones. Dates. Exterior holiday displays permitted from November 15th through January 7th. Additional days available for Diwali and other festivals upon notice to the board. This respects varied calendars and makes space for everyone, without making anyone guess. Hours. Lights may be on from sunset until 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and sunset until 11 p.m. Friday and Saturday. During any school nights or exam periods, we encourage earlier off times by choice. This respects sleep. It also gives families a predictable window to walk and enjoy. Brightness. At the property line, brightness should not exceed a set threshold, measured by a cheap meter Leo found online. We chose a gentle number after a few tests at dusk that felt comfortable to older eyes. Think of it as a porch light, not a stadium. If you prefer to avoid meters, consider this simpler version. If your lights illuminate your neighbor's living room enough to read without a lamp, they are too bright. Movement. No rapid flashing or strobe effects. Slow twinkle is acceptable if it cycles gently. This protects people with migraines, epilepsy, and veterans like Frank, who deserve peace without having to ask for it. Direction. Avoid uplighting into the sky. Shield lights so they glow on your home or yard, not into the bedroom across the street. Downward and inward is kinder. Safety. Use outdoor rated cords and lights. Keep cords away from sidewalks. Only plug into GFCI protected outlets. Deshawn offered to mark safe cable paths with removable clips so folks do not tape down hazards. Setup and removal. Begin setup, November 1st. Remove by January 15th. Those dates give breathing room without leaving displays to tangle in March winds. Power. Saving. Timers or smart plugs are encouraged so no one has to run outside to unplug in a snowstorm. The HOA would bulk purchase a few to lend. Energy costs were real, so we included a guide to efficient bulbs and a little math to show how an hour less every night saves both dollars and the planet. Inclusion. The policy applies to all holidays and styles, from reindeer to paper lanterns, from stars to window candles. We named specific examples on purpose so people felt seen. A simple, confidential process for neighbors to request a small adjustment. If a light impacts health, the board can move quickly to ask for a change without public shaming. We listed examples: shifting a sensor light down, turning a flashing setting to steady, adjusting a timer. Leo held the meter to the edge of the clubhouse and showed us readings from a warm string on a railing and a bright rope on a fence. Nora walked outside and walked back in, smiling. The warm one lets me see faces without squinting. The bright one made me blink. Deshaun shook his head at a cracked plug someone brought and muttered, "This thing is asking for trouble." We built a checklist that a fifth grader could understand. We drew little icons next to each rule so it would be friendly, not scolding. We added a note about volunteers for seniors who wanted a hand, a hotline for questions, and an invitation to a set-up Saturday where we would do it together. When people hang lights together, compliance feels like teamwork. The Saturday after the draft, we held our first Neighbors Helping Neighbors Day. It was cold and bright. There was hot chocolate in big silver urns and a basket of hand warmers by the door. We divided into teams with clear jobs. One team checked outlets and GFCI buttons, one team helped attach clips and hooks safely, one team set timers and tested for off times, and one team gently measured brightness at the property line, calling out numbers like a game show. We made it a party, because the fastest way to get a rule accepted is to make it feel like a community tradition. People brought extra strands to share. Pastor Ruth showed up in a red scarf and spent an hour handing out extension cord covers like Halloween candy. Jasmine's son, Tyler, held a clipboard and checked off "Safety Done" next to a dozen addresses with pride that hit me like sunlight. I watched Ajay and Priya place LED tea lights inside little glass cups that mimicked the flicker of the clay dais, the lights soft and welcoming. Frank stood at the sidewalk and breathed, then nodded. "That feels okay," he said, softer than his military bark, a look of relief unspooling his shoulders. It was a small miracle, watching a compromise move from paper to porch, from intention to practice. People smiled from ladders. Evelyn stood at the end of her walkway with her cane and said, "If the cords stay out of the middle, I can still get to my mailbox. Thank you." We put small flags where cords crossed grass to mark them at night. We wrote down 3 small adjustments to try later: lowering a bright star 1 rung, adding a shield to a flood that lit the whole gable, and moving a lighted deer a few feet farther from the sidewalk to avoid a startle for Evelyn after dark. Tapebras. First test night was Diwali. The sun dipped, and warm points of light dotted entryways without smoke or open flame, glowing like invitations. Families strolled, hands in pockets, hats pulled down, noses pink. AJ tugged his scarf and explained the holiday to a teenager who had not learned the story yet. Linda held the little brightness meter like a proud parent holding a thermometer to a toddler's forehead. Readings were good. A few were high, but those lights were easy to dim by switching to a different mode. The most important meter, though, was not digital. It was in people's bodies. Frank slept through the night. Evelyn reported no headache. Jasmine's son stood on their lawn and said, "It is beautiful, the way you say thanks for a favor." That week, I asked folks to track 2 things on a card stuck to their fridge: how well they slept and how many times they thought about the lights in a frustrated way. We were running a neighborhood trial, not a rigid study, but data helps. Cards came back with smiley faces and numbers that told a story. Sleep was not perfect. Babies still cried. Teens still texted late. But the cards showed fewer negative. Thoughts after 10 at night and earlier bedtimes. On the nights lights clicked off on schedule, the street felt like a contented sigh. We had one hiccup. A house down the block had a candy cane arch with a fast flash mode that was just gorgeous to the 6-year-olds and not so kind to those sensitive to flicker. We knocked with cookies, showed the rule again, and they switched modes in 2 minutes. No one felt shamed. They felt included in a broader promise. We wanted fun that did not take from someone else. Leo and I tinkered with the numbers, adjusting the meter threshold a notch until it matched what Nora's eyes said was comfortable. We found that hardware store meters vary, so we wrote in the policy that the board's meter would be the reference. That way, we avoided silly arguments about whose gadget was right. We also learned that certain new LEDs have an imperceptible flicker at high frequencies that bother a few folks. The fix was either a different brand or a little inline controller. We wrote that into the FAQ. Emergencies teach us to turn toward the problem, not away. Neighborhood life works the same way. A week after the listening circle, we presented the plan at the board meeting. The room was fluorescent, and the chairs squeaked. The ban proposal sat on the first page of the packet like a cold sandwich nobody wanted. I went first, not with a speech, but with a story. I described Frank at the curb breathing easier. I described Evelyn walking to her mailbox in the evening without fear. I described Tyler checking timers and saying, "I helped." I described Ajay lighting his courtyard with gentle warmth that held his tradition and our safety. I handed Linda the cards where people had tracked sleep. I showed a slide with the meter readings, the checklist, and the icons. I named our legal footing, and I explained the accommodation process. Then I stopped and looked around. There was a pause. A good one. The kind where people are processing, not posturing. A board member who had supported the ban rubbed his eyes and said, "I just did not want a problem on my porch at midnight." Linda nodded. "Neither do I," she said. "This plan gives me a way to help people celebrate and helps me say, 'Enough,' if someone forgets the timing." A vote was called. 5 hands rose for the compromise. None stayed for the ban. We were not outlawing tradition. We were teaching courtesy with a clock and a dimmer. We printed the policy on cardstock with bright, friendly colors. We put the icons on one side, the explanation on the other. We included a short letter that began, "This is not a restriction on joy. It is a recipe for kindness." We added 2 phone numbers, a hotline to ask questions, and a confidential line for health-based accommodation requests. We launched a little website with a map of walk times when lights would be on for sure. We added a calendar, Diwali, Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, New Year's. We created a sign for folks to put in their yard. Lights on 5 to 10. Enjoy the stroll. That sign did more than 1,000 emails. It lowered the temperature at the curb. We also hosted a 15-minute timer tutorial. Yes, really. We stood in the clubhouse with 3 different timer styles and showed people how to set them. We loaded a shopping cart with warm white strings that had good reviews for low flicker, offered at cost. We bought cord covers in bulk and handed them out like candy canes. We set up a text reminder that sent a little nudge at 9:55 p.m. Lights off in 5. Thank you for making our street restful. It felt like neighbors closing a shared curtain together. December arrived with a light snow and a grateful steadiness. On Friday nights, families walked after dinner, hands in mittens, pointing at wreaths and stars and clever scenes made of pallets and pine cones. There were fewer giant floodlights and more small clusters, like little galaxies, on eaves. The Rosenberg's menorah shone on the 7th night, steady and clear. Pastor Ruth's railings looked like velvet ropes of light, warm and kind. The O'Connor's star gleamed a shade lower than last year, and somehow looked more elegant. AJ's courtyard danced with tiny flickers behind glass, and he stood by the door with a tray of sweets that smelled of cardamom. Frank sat on his steps some evenings and waved at people passing. "Nice and easy," he said, and I knew he meant more than lights. There were hiccups, of course. A strand went rogue on a windy night and started flashing. A motion flood caught a possum and lit a bedroom at 2 in the morning. An extension cord crept across a sidewalk before we caught it and rerouted it. Each time, the fix took minutes and a soft knock. Our HOA did not need to fine anyone. We sent one gentle reminder letter and left it at that. I tell patients that pain is not failure, it is information. The same applies to community. When you think something failed because it needed adjusting, breathe. Adjusting is the work. Perfection is a movie. Progress is what you can hold. The Tuesday after Christmas, there was a thaw. Kids rode new bikes. Someone lost a mitten, and it hung on a fence post like a flag of truce. I stood at the corner, hands in pockets, and listened to the sound of a neighborhood that knew how to be gentle after 9:30. It is a quiet dream to end the day with a soft dark and a sense that everyone under the roofs is okay. That is what we built. People from 2 nearby HOAs called me and asked what we did. Here is the simple checklist you can borrow and adapt wherever you live. Frame it as rhythm, not restriction. Use language like on hours and quiet hours. Build around safety basics, outdoor rated, GFCI, tidy cords, no blocked sidewalks. Set predictable hours, sunset to a reasonable off time, later on weekends, earlier on school nights by choice. Choose a brightness target and a simple rule of thumb for those without meters. Limit flashing and strobe. Allow slow, gentle twinkle. Encourage warm white or warmer tones for late hours. Create an easy accommodation path for health needs and protect privacy. Offer a help day and supplies, so compliance is easy and communal. Publish a walking map and a light schedule so families know when to stroll. Make enforcement relational. Starts with a conversation, then a reminder, and only if needed, a formal step. People respond to kindness faster than to threats. We also learned a few pro tips. Kids love to be the timekeepers. Let them set the timer with you. It makes the off time a point of pride, not a chore. Seniors appreciate flags by cords and simple, strong clips they can reuse. Young families respond quickly to text nudges. Keep them friendly and grateful. Houses with special displays can post a sign, "Come see the lights, 6 to 8. It gathers joy into the window when it is most welcome. If someone needs an exception for a religious date outside the usual window, say yes gladly and add it to the calendar next year. On New Year's Eve, we held a small walk just before 10. It was cold enough to make your breath look like tiny fog. We stopped in front of Evelyn's house. She had put a single candle in. Each window, the kind you plug in and forget, soft and steady. She stood behind the glass and raised her mug in a salute. Frank and his wife Marisol came down their steps. Jasmine rested her chin on Tyler's hat. AJ brought small sparklers for the moment before the off time, and we lit them in a circle like a wreath. The church bell down the street rang once. 10 o'clock. Lights clicked off, one by one, like a planned grace. The street glowed with moonlight, and we stood quietly together in a darkness that felt safe. No band could have given us that. Only a compromise shaped by care could. If you worry that compromise means surrender, I want to speak to that. In medicine, we chase cures. We love clean lab results. But most of what helps people live well are not one-time cures. They are rituals. Taking a walk after dinner, choosing water over soda most days, turning screens off an hour before bed. These are not surrender. They are stewardship. Our light plan is stewardship for a neighborhood nervous system. It recognizes that delight needs a bedtime, that festivals can glow without leaving anyone blinking at midnight, that respect is stronger when it is given before it is asked. And if you are the person who wants to win, who wants the biggest display, who wants to top last year because that is how you measure fun, I see you. I get it. My brother used to try to out-grill me every July. But the real contest worth winning is the one where you make your neighbor feel more at home. If you can be the house that others enjoy without regret afterward, you carry a championship no trophy can touch. If you are the person who wants quiet, who watches the clock and counts the minutes until the neighborhood calms, I see you too. The plan was written with your nervous system in mind. It is okay to want rest. It is okay to put on slippers at 9 and expect the world outside your windows to dim. That desire is not small. It is legitimate and wise. You do not have to apologize. The lights came down in January as planned. The icicle hooks stayed up, as they always do, because nobody can reach them. But something else stayed too. I noticed more porch conversations in March when the wind was still unfriendly. The HOA newsletter felt less like a list of scolds and more like a note from a friend. People who had never met outside of a wave now knew a name and a favorite cookie. We started a repair cafe the next month to fix small appliances for free because Deshaun and Leo had more to give. The listening circle turned into a habit. When someone proposed a new no skateboards rule later, they remembered the lights and paused. "Let's listen first," someone said. And they did. As for me, I found another way to practice medicine. When people showed me their yards, they told me stories. I heard about a widow's grief when she wrapped a tree with lights because her husband used to do it. I heard about a teenager's anxiety easing when she walked the block with a camera in the evening. I heard about a veteran's pulse easing because a neighborhood said to him, "Your peace matters." You cannot prescribe that from an exam room. You can build it on a street. If you want to try this where you live, start with the following script. It is not legal advice. It is neighbor advice. Step 1. Gather. Send a warm invitation to a listening session. Keep it simple. Promise cookies. Name your hope. To protect both joy and rest. Write the rules on a poster. Speak them aloud. Model. Listening by repeating back what you hear. Step 2. Learn. Call your fire marshal and your city planner. Ask for their 2 best tips. Write those tips into your draft. Invite a local doctor or nurse to say a few words about sleep. People listen to calm voices. Step 3. Draft. Write a policy that uses verbs like enjoy, honor, and rest. Avoid words like ban unless truly necessary. Set hours, brightness, and safety. Offer accommodations clearly. Make it visually accessible. Step 4. Test. Before you vote, run a week of voluntary compliance. Measure, tweak, and celebrate. Turn errors into lessons. Step 5. Vote. Ask the board to choose balance over blanket bans. Remind them that a clear path to enforcement makes their lives easier. Step 6. Launch. Make compliance easy with a help day, shared supplies, and simple reminders. Keep the tone grateful. Share a walking schedule. Step 7. Adjust. Plan to review after the season with a short survey. Celebrate what worked. Fix what did not. Put the policy on a 1-page sheet people can put on the fridge. Above all, tell stories. Human brains change with stories more than with rules. When a board member balks, tell them about Evelyn's safe walk to the mailbox. When a neighbor insists on floodlights, tell them about Frank breathing easier. Stories are the bridge between fear and cooperation. There is a moment I carry like a talisman for grumpy days. It is the minute after our lights clicked off. Not on New Year's, but on a quiet Tuesday. No snow, no party, just the sound of someone shutting a car door and the distant whistle of a train. Lights clicked off, porch by porch, like notes in a lullaby. And in that hush, I felt the feeling I used to feel when a patient's scan came back clear. Relief. Not because we did something flashy, because we did something kind, because people chose each other over an argument. If your HOA faces a similar storm, remember this. Bans feel fast, but breed resentment. Listening feels slow, but builds trust. Time spent on trust is never wasted. Timers on lights are small. Timers on tempers are what we really set. And when you set them together, you get a street that glows when it should and rests when it must. I am grateful to live among people who would rather learn to whisper with their lights than win a fight about them. I am grateful to every person who brought a story, a meter, a cookie, or a willingness to change. I am grateful to you for watching, for caring about community beyond your driveway. May your street find its rhythm. May your porch be a place where someone can cry and laugh, and borrow a ladder. And may your holiday season be what ours became, bright enough to make memories, gentle enough to let everyone sleep,